to the ground, an arrow in the sky will fall into your eye. Have to tip your wings into the mighty wind. If this brings you down, will you look up again? What goes up may not come down. What goes up just spins around. Nothing to be gained, nothing to be lost. Step into the rain, uncover the train. What flows up could make you drown. Kick and float to run aground. Plant the tree on hands and knees. The seed inside grows both ways.
Hi, it's Chuck from Above the Basement, Boston Music and Conversation. While touring as a drummer for Vermont's own Waylon Speed, Justin Crowther had a crazy idea to manufacture vinyl records. In 3 years, he's produced thousands of unique records riding the vinyl wave in Burlington, Vermont. The Burlington Record Plant is a labor of love, and without any initial experience in production, Justin has become an innovator in the vinyl world, building on a foundation of hard work and determination. Justin continues to play drums in a Burlington band called Blowtorch, and he also has an instrumental album out. Check out the episode notes for the track list of songs you'll hear throughout our talk. Okay, so here's our conversation with Justin Crowther, recorded at the Burlington Record Plant in Burlington, Vermont.
Hi, Justin.
Hello.
I'm sorry you're standing.
That's fine.
Usually we have chairs.
All
and
good.
We could sit on the floor. I'm not kidding. If you want.
I don't know. I'm old for that. I'm old too old to
Well,
sit on the
there's,
floor.
yeah.
I don't mind standing, but go ahead and get the stool. All right.
We're speaking with a drummer right now, Chuck.
We are. The drummer of Waylon Speed.
Yes.
And Waylon comes from the Reverend's son.
That's it.
Is that it?
Yes.
See? We've done our research.
You have a reverend in your band.
Yes, he married my wife and I, Randy Lynn,
Oh, cool.
in my brother's, the bass player's backyard.
Huh.
That's how that happened.
There's a song in there somewhere.
There is.
Wow, that is a very interconnected musical story right there.
Indeed. Yep.
That's cool. And that's how you met him?
We grew up with him in Pennsylvania.
And what does he play again?
He plays the guitar.
And then your brother's the bass player.
Yep.
Your drums.
Mhm.
And there's another guitarist.
Yeah, Kelly played
Kelly,
guitar.
Is Kelly the singer too?
Yep.
I like his voice. We've been talking to so many, obviously musicians, but a lot of singers. One of the things that I've liked about the singers we've talked to is that they sound like who they are. They don't sound
Right.
like somebody else.
Mhm.
So it's not like they say,
It's
oh, you
important.
sound like this person to this person. They're very unique.
Right.
I mean, I was mentioning to you earlier, the latest album, Ken.
Yep.
I heard a little bit of Uncle Tupelo in there, but not like he sounds like
Not
Uncle,
the singer.
He doesn't sound like Jeff Tweedy or
Right.
who's the guy from Sunvolt?
Jay
Farrar.
Farrar. Yep.
He doesn't sound like them. He sounds very unique to himself. Yeah, listen to it all the way up here.
Thank you
Yeah.
for checking it out.
Oh, no.
You know?
And it helps to have someone in the band who can put it immediately onto vinyl.
Yeah.
You put all
Yeah.
do you put
That-
everything on vinyl, like all your demos and
Not
conversations
yet.
you have at
Not yet.
home
I'm playing drums in a band called Blowtorch, and they've been a band for 30 years. And my brother and I are playing with them, and we played on Friday night. And I pressed them 50 copies same day. I packaged them, and we sold them Friday night.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that was like really the first time, other than Waylon Speed, we practiced on that Kin record. which
That's
I'll give
really
you guys.
cool.
That's very cool because I
That's
know
him.
because one of the cool things that I liked, I went and saw Ryan Montbleu, and like you could go home that night and you could buy the digital download, and I think you could even get the CD if you wanted of the concert that you went to, which I think is
neat.
That's a really
Oh.
special thing. It's
It
like,
is.
It's like you have it, you can remember moments in it
Yeah,
that you hear on
absolutely.
that.
You could stream and you could do MP3s of. I mean, we talked about Fish before. I mean, being in Burlington, we got to mention them, of course.
Mhm.
But they every single night for years and years and years, you can get their show. So Waylon plays where?
We have not played a show in over a year.
Really? When did Kin come out?
2 years ago?
Oh, really?
3 years ago? Yep.
Yeah, so it was 2014, right?
Yeah.
Do you write a lot of the music, or do other guys do it, or?
My brother Kelly and myself wrote a lot of it. Chad wrote a few songs. A lot of the instrumental stuff I had put together, but it was a collaborative effort for sure.
But you said you were on tour for a while, right? Before you came here?
Well, I toured when I lived in Pennsylvania all through high school, and when I graduated, I moved to the wonderful city of Worcester.
Worcester,
for a year.
Mass.
Yep. And built rock and roll shows. And
What do you mean you
and
built rock and roll shows?
I did production work with my dad. My dad worked, was involved with the Grateful Dead community and the Gathering of the Vibes. I worked right when I was
really?
young. And
What is that? I'm sorry.
it's a music festival.
So wait a minute, back up. So your dad, what did your dad do?
My dad worked in concert production, building stages, building infrastructure for music festivals.
Did he
and
tour with the Dead?
Not working for them, but he did,
He got some
right.
experience.
Yeah, I definitely grew up with the Grateful Dead.
Oh, wow.
Big time. But I played in a hardcore and punk rock band when I was a teenager and toured all over. And
Anybody that grows up with the Grateful Dead has to do
Mhm.
the exact opposite.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
And then
totally. And it's so funny that the punk scene and the Dead scene is so just different ways of saying no or screw you to the system.
Yeah, sure.
And it's underground.
there's a common theme.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Whether people want to admit it.
You're right, because it's a following, it's a culture.
Mhm.
You literally speak the same language.
Yeah.
You go to different shows, but it's completely different music.
Right.
I love that parallel.
Now, I'm older. I love the Grateful Dead, so it was, and I never disliked it. But yeah, I guess it's a way to rebel when you're a kid.
Now, did you help him like stack speakers and stuff at festivals and do all
Mhm.
like the running the chords
Yeah.
to the board and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you're one of those barefoot little kids, 2-year-olds running around
Yes.
in the fields
Yep.
with your dad while your dad was working.
Uh-huh.
Sweet.
And there he was a truck driver before that, so in the summer times, my brother and I would go out in the semi with him and go all over the country.
Is your dad still doing anything like that stuff now, or doing?
He's
anything?
retired now,
Yeah.
but he lives above us.
Oh,
5
he lives
minutes
up
from-
here?
Yep,
Oh,
he lives
sweet.
up here.
Oh.
And we were just replacing windows this morning, so we're still working together. Just he's taking it easy,
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Now he's
Yeah.
helping you out.
He's helping me out.
that's
Yeah.
that's a nice thing.
It is.
You toured throughout the states?
Yes, never out of the country, not yet.
Yeah.
But the band I'm playing with, Blowtorch, we have some stuff going possibly in Japan. Like last year was the first year in 20 years that I haven't toured. I think the next time I tour, it's got to be out of the States.
Is Waylon Speed just on hiatus kind
Yep.
of right now?
I would say an indefinite hiatus.
Yeah. Everyone has their own projects otherwise,
Yep.
too?
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of the band called? The other band?
Blowtorch.
Blowtorch.
But they've been around a while.
Yeah, they've been around for 30 years. They started in the Reagan era, and then when Trump got elected, they had a reason to come back, and the message was just very, very
Interesting.
congruent to what's happening.
This is not our party type of
Yeah.
message.
Yep.
Where are they from?
They're from Burlington. Yeah, Blowtorch is a great band, and I'm super
Yeah,
honored
check
to
'em
play
out.
with them.
So you're their drummer?
Yep.
That's fantastic. They never stopped playing. Did they
No,
stop playing?
Never stop playing.
Make the band great again?
Yeah, make
Make
please.
their tagline is "Make punk great again."
Oh,
Are you
really?
serious?
It is. Yeah.
Good for them. Good for
And
them.
it's just very intentional, very thoughtful, and very refreshing. Yeah, it's still very much underground. Like we just pressed the record, and there's some distribution that's going to happen through the plant here. Some friends that I made, but I want to go to Japan with those guys. Go somewhere else, and
What a great opportunity.
Yeah,
What kind of following do you guys have?
it's an underground following for
Yeah?
sure. But there's
Is it kind of like the Descendants following? I'm
Yeah,
I'm
it's-
asking because I'm totally clueless
no,
about it. but
it's
so-
very Ramones-ish.
Yeah?
Songwriting styles.
Because it's
And,
very I saw a documentary not too long called The Descendants. I think it was
Mhm.
called The Descendants about them.
Yeah.
And how influential they were.
Indeed.
And I found out the same thing about Bob Mould. He was Husker Du, right?
Mhm.
And then there was also Mission of Burma.
Yeah.
All these bands that unless you were into the scene, you may not have heard of them, but were so influential to other upcoming bands. You get that kind of feedback from people?
Yeah, totally. I think that Blowtorch is still so much underground. Like they've never put a record out until now. It's not like a social media thing, and it's like paper flyers.
So
and
when you say record, you mean they've never gone into studio?
no,
It's always just been a live
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, we'll have to see one of their records.
yeah, I actually
Um,
took them all, and I don't have any now. But
Yeah.
I'll have to get you guys one.
So you press their record, right?
Yep.
We should discuss that Justin's not only a drummer and a musician and touring for a while, but he also has a day job.
Yes, he does.
Yes, I do.
We're sitting in a really awesome room.
It's a
and,
cool office.
Thank you.
Yeah, we love your office.
We talk about vinyl a lot
Mhm.
in previous episodes, and I kind of rediscovered my love of vinyl,
Mhm.
and I went out and I bought old school dual turntable, an old school amp from like early 80s, late 70s, and I started buying vinyl again. I love it. I love the sound of it. I love the, what do you call that when you touch things? The
Tactile.
The tactile stuff you feel when you're taking it out and
Smell.
putting it on.
There's a smell too.
The smell of
indeed.
it, the liner notes. It's a thoughtful, mindful, purposeful thing that you do to play music.
I
which
agree.
Usually it's mindless. You hit a button and you
Right.
walk away, right? And one of the things I noticed, I put the album on and I go in and sit at my desk and it ends. I'm like, oh, I gotta get up.
Yeah.
I can't turn the volume up or down. You got to do that manually.
He's gotten
you
in
have to be very
better
present.
shape since he's
Yes.
listened
I
to
used to be
vinyl.
very
'Cause
sedentary.
he walks
Right.
now.
I totally agree with you,
Yeah.
and it's, being around it every single day. Every single one is an artifact. Every single one that we pull off the press is treated as such.
Yeah.
No matter what, every one that you pull off the press is going to end up somewhere, and it is an artifact of somebody that put a lot of time into it. Each one is different. It never gets old to me.
There's something about records, I think, where the sound of it, the smell of it, the feel of it, like Chuck was saying, and frankly, it's nostalgic for someone like me and many people that remember using records because, my dad and I would listen to records together. We would have them on in the living room. The family sits around. You hear that little static in the beginning right before the first song comes on, whether it's classical or Bob Dylan or Hart. And there's something very special about that it's the listeners.
Your dad listens to Heart?
Did I say Hart?
You did say Heart.
No, I meant...
Nothing wrong with Heart. I just didn't know your dad would listen to Heart.
I don't know I said Hart. Anyway, when you came into this room, what was the vision here?
I put an international plan on my cell phone and called all over the world probably for 3 months to find the equipment. It's a story now that you hear is very common with plants that are starting. We found this in Germany, the original equipment, and it was in the Warner Brothers plant, at least from the 60s and 70s. And I had taken everything that our family had pretty much and got a small business loan and bought this stuff without ever seeing it and knew nothing about record pressing and just knew that the only answer would be to figure it out.
What was the impetus for you to start searching for this piece of equipment and to get into this business?
We were on tour. Waylon Speed was on tour. We were in Dover, New Hampshire, and I don't drink or drug, so it was a very sober epiphany, if you will, personally, for myself. I was looking at my friend's record collection, and I was just looking at the mechanics of it at the grooves for the first time ever in a different way, and I'm like, how are these made? Nobody's making them in Vermont or in New England. I love records. If I can figure out how to make these, I can take 7 jobs that I have and make one, probably. And that was very naive. And then I stayed up all night, wrote about it, and didn't stop. The next morning, it was game on.
What do you mean you wrote about it?
Just wrote. It was just this stream of consciousness that was
Like a mission statement kind of thing?
In the van.
And that's when you started looking around for the press. Was that sort of like the center of things?
Yeah, the press. So we got that, and I had it shipped here on a ship from Germany, trucked up here from New York City, and we took the pallets, unwrapped them, and we're like, what is this? What is this? And what is this?
Any of you engineers or any kind of background in this kind of thing?
Just like concert production.
Yeah.
That's about as far as it goes, and owning shitty cars and motorcycles and being
so you're a
forced
little-
to fix them.
You're a little handy
Yeah,
with motors and
just
stuff.
kind of out of necessity. But so when I had all this stuff out, I was like, okay, who's doing compression or injection molding locally that I could connect with, because they can help me figure it out.
Right.
Gained security clearance at Burton Snowboards, and Devore, he is an engineer. He's from Germany, and
I'm sorry, who's Devore?
Devore is one of the engineers
Okay.
that helped me, and he's building the second line out with me now. But I gained security clearance at the prototype facility, and I'm like, I don't want to make snowboards. I just know you guys are using the same water, you're using a boiler. I just want to come in and check it out. And I went over there and I was like, who's in charge? Who built this machine? Who did these custom controls? And I met Devore, and I was like, can I hire you on your off time to come over here and help me figure out this pressing machine? Had no idea what I was in for. And he came over and we took it all apart piece by piece, talked him into it. We became friends. He yelled at me a lot. Yeah, that was 3 years ago, and he's like the brains behind it. I met this hydraulics guy at a local truck shop, helped me with the hydraulics, and then a pipe fitter to do all the steam.
Getting back to Burton for a bit, so they've been around, I think, for 30 years or so. One of the first snowboard to really come out and be mainstream. So, what's the similarity of the molding? You said pouring molds, right? Is it
it's really
the
not
equipment, or is it the substance, or both? Or
good question. It's mostly just the equipment and the process, even though it is vastly different than our application of steam. They only operate at like 15 pounds of steam, and it's only to mold prototype boards. I knew they were using a steam boiler,
I see.
and air systems and PLC controllers, and so I knew it was very close to what I needed to get into.
That's really interesting. And I was curious when you started searching around for these parts and these machines and wherever you looked. Did you kind of target certain areas you knew there might be some?
Yeah, and talk to the old schoolers. Like there's a guy that's been pressing records for 60 years, and he's like a great friend of mine now. And I called him. They were like, "You got to call this guy Chris Moss. He's from Australia, and he has a plant in England." I'm like, "Okay." And I called him up, and he was like, "Mate, you're out of your fucking mind. You're never going to do this. It's impossible. Good luck," and hung up on me. 2 months later, I started to rebuild the machine, and I was like, "Wait a second, I know this does this." Getting closer and closer, and just kept sending him pictures of the equipment.
The guy who said, "You're out of your mind."
Yep. Then after a while, he's like, "Okay, now the extruder, there's no way you're going to get that extruder to work." Sent him pictures a month later of it working. It was that kind of thing, and it was like...
Good for you, man. That's awesome. Because that's not really the optimism you want to hear coming your way.
No.
Like, you're out of your mind. You had to be pretty determined to keep on going.
Yeah.
I'm curious, did you find that people were more protective of like secrets? Of like, I'm not telling you how to do this. Like, you have no idea what you're doing. You don't come up from a family of manufacturing any kind of. These are, what do you call it, trade secrets?
Yeah,
I'm not going to tell you this.
Big time.
Yeah,
big time.
Did you? So is this your charming personality that got through to them?
I think that it was that when I talked to people about it, I would be like, "There's no option for me. Like, I took the last pennies that I had to my name and bought this equipment. There is no option of me not doing this." And I think that a lot of people that were starting plants then, it was like heavy investments, $1 million investments, people building it out and building it out. I didn't have the money to fly people in that pressed records before. And I think over time, some of the old schoolers were like, this kid, like I identified with them and where they came from. And I have my own book now, and I've had to like definitely learn a lot of the secrets myself.
What do you mean your own book?
I'm going to write a book, and I have like all the mess ups and the cycle times that I don't have
how
the
to
clout.
make a record, basically.
Yeah, it would be more of like a Zen in the art of record pressing style with a story behind it of touring, and then
I heard the same thing with the guys who did Harry's Razors. You heard of them? Because they had to go.
have
They went to
Harry's
Germany, and they got this old machinery that they had to use to make the blades. They bought this stuff.
Wow.
Probably, I don't know how old it was, but it was old stuff.
Do you use Harry's Razors?
I have, actually. I have used it, yes.
We're not sponsored by Harry's Razors, but
Right.
we will be
Yeah,
after this podcast. I use the 2-blade disposables for a while too, but it always freaking
We talk about shaving in every podcast, by the way.
So I discovered Harry's.
Luckily, you only started shaving like, what, 3 weeks
8 years ago, yeah.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about was the actual machine. This is not a mass production machine, right? It's one by one.
one by one.
Right?
Yep, every 35 seconds.
So you get, from what I saw, you do about 100 an hour. Is that about right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can do 800 a day. So that must have been, I mean, to your point, they appreciated that because they knew you weren't going to just start making millions of dollars. Well, at least not yet, anyways, hopefully. But you weren't just going to be just pushing off a whole bunch of albums.
That's the other thing. It's a very good point that the competition, the closest plant is in Brooklyn now. They have 6 automatic machines, and I have 1 manual machine.
That's the closest. There's not one in Boston, huh?
No.
Oh, really?
You guys want to start one?
I'd have to get
Terrible business
I'd have to get
decision.
into the club.
Yeah.
But it looks like such a cool job, man. Look
It
at all
is.
the
I
cool
do love
toys
it.
you get to play with.
I do love it very much.
Can you take us through like a 2-minute version of how you make a record?
You want to go just mechanics?
Sure.
Okay.
Just the mechanics. And
Yep.
then that's one of the key things I want to know about is how we actually get that music onto that sucker.
So we start with steam. The molds in the machine are essentially it's same principles as a waffle iron.
Yeah.
Hot and cold, hot and cold. And the most efficient way to do that is with steam and water, cold water. So the steam boiler generates the heat, and we send steam into the molds to about 250 degrees. It molds at 300 degrees and then goes to a water cycle and then cools the molds down.
And each one is about 30 to 35 seconds
Yep.
from placing it in there to putting it down
Yes.
to doing its job and opening it up and pulling it out.
And when
And-
you say the molds, what are you cooling down? What does it look like?
The record molds, I'll show you guys, it's just steel molds, aircraft grade steel that the molds are made out of.
The stuff you're putting in there's a bunch of different formulas and different things. So one of them that you showed us looks like little black pellets.
Yep.
And they are, some of them were, or maybe all of them are chopped up old records.
Right now we're running 3 cans of virgin vinyl, which is pure, to 1 can of regrind.
It's just vinyl that chips.
Virgin
that-
vinyl.
It's
in
never
pellet
been a
form.
record. It's a virgin record.
We get this stuff from England. It's made in England, and it's record compound. It's like a high grade A class 1 PVC vinyl.
Yeah.
It's not the most pretty stuff to work with.
Yeah.
It's PVC, like PVC pipes?
Yes. It's the same principles as
Yeah.
like injection molding, extrusion, plastics extrusion. But I look at stuff that's made out of plastic, even like a toothbrush or a pen, and you can see the dull finish and the inconsistencies in the molding process, and you would hear that in a record.
Right.
So
it's gotta
quickly.
be- so it's gotta be
absolutely
pure.
precise.
He was talking about the molding and cooling down the actual mold.
Right.
So what happens after that?
So we pull it out, and it just gets trimmed.
You cool down the actual mold, but what about the substance? You got to get the substance in there.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do that?
We hand load the machine.
But you boil down those little pellets first, like
Yep.
what is it?
This
What-
machine back there, there's a black hopper, and the pellets go up there, and it's a steam heated extruder with a big turn screw in it. So the machine extrudes it through a screw. We have it set on a timer switch to make those pucks that you see.
And it puts out about the approximate amount for each one. It's like a little bagel making
Yeah,
machine.
I have
kind of thing, right?
a pedal that we hooked up that you hit one time, and it extrudes for a 12-inch.
It's like a puck.
Uh-huh.
And then you put that in the middle of like the waffle iron type thing?
Yeah.
Is it hot?
It is.
It's like boiling
Yep.
hot kind of thing? You can you wear
About
gloves?
300 degrees.
So then it presses, it cools and everything like that, and then you have to trim whatever's squeezed
Yeah,
out from,
exactly.
from the mold
Mhm,
there.
the flashing.
Is this 180 gram? Is it what's the 180 now is like the standard high end
Yeah.
remastered stuff
Mhm.
now. And what would be less than that, 120 or something like that?
Yeah, standard was 110 or 120.
Okay,
and
so they're much thinner and
yeah.
the idea was just thicker and
Yeah, and they sound just as good.
sound
So,
just as good.
Yes.
So it's really just about what? Why would you want 180 over
the
something
sticker
else?
on the shrink wrap.
Well, when I bought my turntable, I bought a KLH, an old KLH,
Mhm.
and the guy I brought it to fix it said, "This is not a good turntable for you because it's not a weighted
Right.
needle,
Mhm.
and so it's just going to dig grooves into your album as you work." He said, "You need something that so it doesn't dig." So would that
Right.
help at all with the 180?
As far as I understand from what I do, I see the 180 is you can take a Chick Corea record that's 110 grams and it sounds absolutely amazing. I think the grooves they're microscopic, and I think the 180 gram is just more for the longevity. You could leave it in your car a little longer in the summer.
Yeah.
It'll sit on the shelf more, but as far as less wear,
You have to
I
do
think-
a severe study, I guess. Look
Mhm.
at it over years and years and years, see what happens. But
You know.
it certainly sounds better. And it certainly feels better. It's
It
like
does.
a nice heavy piece.
And that's
So-
why, like, the molds, when I had them channeled for the plant, I was like, I don't want to reinvent anything, but I do want to do, like, a heavier weight. So ours is, like, 160, 165.
Let me feel this.
Yep.
This is 160,
Yeah, you can pull
165
that.
grams.
Is it how much material you put onto the mold, or is it the mold itself?
You can make a heavier record using less steam to mold, so it'll spread less.
Oh, I see.
But it's
Okay.
it's the machining in the molds itself, the cavity itself in the molds, that determines the weight,
Okay.
largely.
Okay, Justin, you get the press, you push it down. Every 35 seconds, you get an album. So, what's next?
No, so the music's getting pressed into the. So when the hydraulic press is squeezing at 2,000 pounds and holding for that 35 seconds, the stampers that we put in the molds, we bolt into the molds.
Yeah.
The PVC is getting squeezed into the microscopic grooves. So when it comes out, we can pull a press right out of the press and play it.
So the press has imprinted on it the lines that go onto the record. So it's
Yep.
not cut into the record; it's pressed into the record.
It's pressed.
It's
in.
always been the
pressed?
case.
Yes.
That's
so,
fascinating.
oh boy.
I know.
Okay,
I had
so
no idea. I thought it was cut.
it's electronically transferred to the press.
Mechanically.
So you have
Talk.
to.
Okay.
I'm going to stop
I'm-
talking. Just
give
go.
Me 2 minutes. I'm
Yeah.
just going to grab some.
Okay.
So my guess is that
I had no idea that you
every
actually.
one of
Chuck,
them is like a
Chuck,
mold, right?
Yes.
He creates a mold of that, and it's a unique mold to that album. Now we need to find out when
The mold.
when he comes back. We need to find out
Where's he
how do they
going?
make the mold. Because they need to make the mold, right? They need to scratch into the mold. Maybe that's where they scratch it in. They scratch into the mold.
Scratch a mold. It's
Because
like it's.
but they need to scratch the lines in to make it.
These
it's
are
gotta come from
grooves
somewhere.
that I think
like the chicken or the egg.
initially came into the mold. What does the mold look like?
Well, he's showing us.
God.
He had a breakdown on a public elevator. He wasn't going up or down. Was bound to happen to him sooner or later. The cable snapped without a sound. Winding up, winding down, winding up, unwound. Stuck at the corner of Hope operation. Looks like it'll be there for a while. Another victim of public transportation. Been waiting on a long lost time. Winding down, winding down, winding up, unwound.
That looks like those big old, what are those big DVDs? Blu-ray.
Okay.
Laser
Hold on a
disc.
second. Let me
Laser
take
disc.
a picture of this thing.
Yeah, it looks like a
Okay,
laser
ready?
disc.
Yeah.
Ready?
So that is scratched on, right?
This is a lacquer master disc, so these come blank. We use a cutting engineer in
Can I
Chicago.
touch this? I'm sorry.
Yeah. And say you have a tape machine or digital files that are getting piped in through the cutting lathe. So it's an industrial looking record player that cuts the vibrations.
I told you, it cuts the
Yep,
vibrations.
That's
in.
how it's made
So-
originally. Once this is finished, then you have this that's playable.
These are vibrations that come from sound.
Sound
That
waves.
it's so
It's the best thing ever.
Well, it's
I
like
know.
it's almost like one of those things for that seismograph. It's like a seismograph
that,
kind of thing.
and the grooves are V-shaped, so you have a stereo. The left of the V is the left channel, and the right is the right channel. The cutting stylus is like a small speaker, and it pipes the information in and the vibrations and cuts the master lacquer. And then, when you get to the end of the process, the stylus on a turntable is like a small microphone. So it's picking that stuff up, essentially,
Now, did you have to find a whole other machine for that too?
I outsource that.
You outsourced
Yes,
that? I see.
I'm like hunting a lathe right now, and I want to bring this all in house, but that's a whole other story.
So what company does that?
A guy does it in Chicago.
What are we looking at here?
So this is the stamper.
Okay, but once it's pressed, you send this right here to Chicago.
No.
Nope. I send the master files, either the tape reels or the music digital files,
To them.
and we get the lacquer master made. And then he ships this to the electroplating facility, which is another part of the process. Back in the day, the plants had all this stuff in-house. But since the 70s or so, it's very popular for the plants to outsource this stuff. And especially in my case, I needed to outsource it in order to get into
Right.
business. So a lot of the problems, if these aren't cut precisely, there's pops and crossed grooves can happen. But anyway, when this is perfected, you send it to electroplating. They spray it with pure silver. It goes in an electroplating tank and electrocuted with nickel tablets to make it really hard to press at 2,000 pounds. These stampers, they make a mother and then the two-step stamper. So then you peel this off, and then you have your negative. So this is ridges instead of grooves. Oh. So this is
what the top of the press.
This is what we're using to replicate.
Got it. But the black thing under that, that's
The
the
vinyl.
master. That's the vinyl that is the negative. Sorry. Yes, that's the negative.
Yeah, but once the
This becomes
stampers are made from this just gets used to stack records. It's done.
And could you actually play that?
You can, yeah. And I found some. I have the guy who makes the stampers. After he's done with these, he'll just like throw them out, and I'm like, I'm not the only one that does it, but I was like, send me them, and I'll use them to cure the records. And I think one I had was Fleetwood Mac. I like hand spun it, and there's some gems in that stack right there.
No way. Like the original.
Yeah, and this is 14-inch, so you need to find a really funny record player that you can hand turn to see what it is.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So you use this thing as the negative.
Mhm.
This is notches, not grooves.
Right.
You take the black or whatever color it is off of that thing. You got to trim it or something?
Yeah,
or-
we put it. It's a hot knife trimmer that you put in the trimmer, and it presses it again. It usually comes out around 110 degrees, still in the label area, which isn't terribly hot. But you still get some curing time out of that, and the hot knife trims the edge nicely to give you your finished
I
edge.
saw in the video.
Yep.
It just kind of goes around in a circle and trims it off.
And then you stack them.
like
and
after the waffle's done, you can use a knife and just cut around.
Cut around
Exactly.
the waffle, yeah.
That's it.
Fascinating.
Okay.
So, how many times did it take you before you got the process down to whatever science you have?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
And I'm saying that sarcastically too, because I'm still
Well,
like,
it's a learning process, but
it was a long time,
before
day and night.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what was the period of time when you got the press and you were ready to go that you actually made your first
A year.
record? 1 year.
Mhm.
What was that like, the first time you made a record and played it?
It was pretty amazing.
What was it?
It was Gregory Isaacs. It was an old set of stampers that I got as practice stampers. I was like, if you have anything laying on the shelf. It was, I forget, it was an old surf record on one side, Eddie and the Bunnymen or some crazy
awesome.
surf band, and then the other
Yeah.
side was this classic Gregory Isaacs record.
And once you did that, did you make a few to like kind of modify, check things with the weight and all that? Or
Yeah, like thousands probably.
What was the
Wow.
what was the biggest problem you would have? Was it like air bubbles and like what was the biggest issue that you had?
It's
technical issue. you had to
just
work through?
tricky any way you slice it to get a perfectly flat record.
So it's flatness, making sure. I mean, you have like little
Yeah.
calipers that
Yeah.
you measure. Is it all hand calipered?
Yep.
Using electronic
No.
or computerized measurements.
No.
So that's a big thing. It has to be flat.
Mhm.
Has to be a certain thickness.
What do you mean? The record has to be flat?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I mean, it has to be evenly flat all the way around.
It has to come out flat.
But
And then-
but it can't be thicker on one side of the edge.
no, I
and
know.
thinner on the other
But
side.
so that's a good question. So you must get rejects, right? Or
We have
do
a
you-
very low amount of rejects, fortunately, right now.
And so once you get the record out, you have to cool it immediately. How do you make it flat?
It cools in the molds
well,
with cold water.
This flat from being not warped.
Right.
I'm,
but there's
I'm talking about
evenness.
I'm talking about thickness of the actual
to the
album.
thousandths of an
one
inch.
side of the album being 190 grams and the other side
Thickness.
being
Yep.
160 grams. Yeah,
Mhm.
thickness. Yeah.
I think what a lot of people, like some of the old school guys that I've had the honor to learn from, they're like, the variables are infinite. And this is my own personal theory, and somebody who studies, who is a real engineer might tell me that I'm totally off. But I believe that there's like, at the molecular level, when you have heat, you're forming PVC, there's this level of uncertainty that is always going to be there. And if one part doesn't cure right, if the channels in the molds, the steam doesn't hit correctly, you're going to have a dull spot here and you're going to hear it. And it's just this process that never really had the chance to be perfected, because at the height of its, 80s, early 80s, when it started to kind of like reach its peak, the manufacturing process, it was never like this modern technology was able to swoop in and like modernize this process.
Right.
The machines were never perfected. I still don't think the way you make a record is like an efficient way to do it, but
Right.
it's the only way to do it.
Well, the machine's from 1960.
Yeah.
So another thing that we read today that we both thought blew our minds, and I don't know if this is something that you learned on your own or maybe you learned from one of the masters, is that you discovered that was it louder songs or heavier songs or maybe more rock songs needed to
Right.
be in the beginning of the album?
On the outer rim.
Now, how did you discover that?
That was one of the first things when we pressed the Waylon Speed record, because for whatever reason it was just naturally sequenced that the heavy song was up front, and I think the guy who cut the lacquer was like, that's great that that's on the first song on the record, because the closer you get in, the less room that you have. So
Interesting. So it's almost a physics thing of the needle on the vinyl because you're getting closer,
Right.
the circles are smaller.
Yep.
So when you play one and you play another, do you at this point hear a difference in some of these? Can you ever detect a difference from album to album?
yes, in decibel levels, a lot of it comes from the masters, how the record was mastered.
We talked about Arc Iris before. You print 10 of the same thing. If you put all 10 on the same song, would you be able to find a difference between track 2 on one and track 2 on the other?
No. Maybe in the first 6 that you press until all the metal and all the steel and steam is stabilizing and getting hot and cold. Maybe.
Oh, so you do a bunch before you do the actual...
Yeah, like when we're doing test pressings, I'll scrap the first 6 just to make sure everything's up
6.
to temperature.
When a band comes to you with a list of songs, do you tell them, make sure your heavier songs are early in the cut so that you can keep those decibel levels?
If they ask, yep. If the person mastering it and sequencing it for vinyl usually has that done before it comes to
But
me.
that's tough. I mean, sometimes people want to have a specific order of the songs. It has nothing to do with really the decibel. It's just about
Right.
the story
Right.
they're trying to tell or whatever. So you might get lucky. They might not care.
Right.
Or you might get lucky and just happens to be the song that you wanted them to hear first is the big heavy song.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Huh.
And, a lot of records were recorded back in the day for this format. So now it's like I'm in my room recording a record with GarageBand and it sounds great and it's going to work for all intents and purposes. But it's far different than like, a $40,000 budget like Frank Zappa going to the studio saying this is going to be the B-side track. And it's all planned for a record.
Let's talk about color.
Mm-hmm.
We'll look on the website and all the pictures, but there's these gorgeous fluorescent colors and
Silver.
very different themes. So Does that change at all the way that you press these, or?
Slightly. Depending on the colors, some of them, like the glow-in-the-dark compound, is a little tricky. We just did Marty Friedman's record, the guy from Megadeth, and we did a limited edition on glow-in-the-dark. When you get into that kind of stuff, like the splatter albums, there is a novelty component. They're not going to sound as good as a black record, but they're not going to sound nearly as bad as a picture disc. You do compromise some fidelity slightly.
Really?
Can you do a picture disc?
I'm teaching myself now. I have one up there that I did, and there's only a couple of people in the world that do that.
Is that the one with the flower?
Yep.
That's gorgeous, man.
Wait, which one?
The one with the sunflower.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Look at that, man. That's
Hold on
gorgeous.
1 second. Oh, hey, how you doing?
Good.
Are you
I'm
here?
waiting out here.
Oh, yeah, come on in. There's a big garage.
It's the door open. You see my Jeep? My Jeep has a
Outside,
frog in the
sir.
back.
You're live on the podcast right now.
Oh, cool.
Come on in. It's my sister Laura. She's coming in.
Hello.
Hey, Laura.
Come on in.
This is Justin.
Hi.
Here, hold on. We'll take a little.
Yep.
Breaks are nice. You can pee, you can drink, whatever.
If you're on, you can pee, you can drink, then you can pee, you can drink, you can pee, and you can pee.
Yeah.
And a little bit, and about 5 minutes later, you can pee again because you have the bladder of a little girl.
And you have a man bladder.
I don't have to pee for days. Days.
I can defend myself to a degree. I cut a hole in the van. There's a cutout in the band van, so we never had to stop.
Sure. My dad, we were driving to Toronto once when I was about 9 years old. I had to pee so badly. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
And my dad, for some reason, would not stop. And so he's like, just pee in this bottle. So I peed in the thing, filled it up, gave it back to him because when you're like 9, what else do you do?
What do you...
Dad, I'm done. So I gave it to him. He proceeds to chuck it out the window. This is back when littering was a norm.
Yeah.
It all went back in his face.
Luckily, you were only 6. And
You've
you weren't
seen
like
that
25
before?
I
years old.
handed a coffee cup like this to a friend of mine, and I was driving.
It's like Dumb and Dumber.
And I was like, you got to throw this out, man. Okay. And he did the same thing.
Here's the lesson. If anyone hands you a container full of urine, don't take it.
Don't take it. That's it. Going forward.
If I'm ever in a car and someone is handing me, I'm in the wrong car.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
very good
Because that
point.
should not be happening.
You know we're driving home tomorrow to Boston.
Hey,
I
hold
will,
this.
I will pull over wherever you want.
All right. So anyway, Justin,
Where did we
I'm
leave
very
off?
naive about. We were talking about color, but I wanted to ask about the types of bands and groups and genres. I get the vibe here that this is mostly rock based, but have you done jazz or classical?
Yep, we did Grammy Award-winning string quartets.
Really?
So so some of the that you've pressed have won Grammys for that album?
That recording.
Do you get a little mini Grammy or something like that for that?
No.
You should.
So Grammy Award-winning quartet was pressed right in this room.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
love
big
that.
deal.
I
man.
love that.
I guess it is, yeah. And we've done a lot of like reissue, like classic punk rock albums, hardcore stuff, and then, like I do work for major label to independent to local, do a lot of stuff for Prosthetic Records, which is like Animals as Leaders, and Marty Friedman for Megadeth.
Really? And I saw when you walk in, there's a woman artist on the top when you walk in. What's her name again?
Juliana Hatfield.
Juliana Hatfield.
Yeah, she's freaking
So
great.
there's a box of her albums that are going out to her label, or
Those are, we already finished that job. A lot of that is backstock for labels that we press for that repress records.
is this word of mouth how they find out about
Yeah,
you from one other band, or how's that
I've
work?
never advertised one time. And that's kind of why I had a lot of courage to keep going with it, because I knew there would be plenty of work. It's not like I'm opening a coffee shop and I need to convince people. It's like the records need to be really, really good, and there's so few of us on the planet that make them that I trusted the work would be there. So
Right.
one record at a time, making people happy. They tell people.
It's sustainable now, where you have clients. What's the biggest order you've had for one of these major labels?
what are the
volume.
badges?
4,000 I took early on with a band called Alberta Cross, and it was a total nightmare, and I almost buried myself taking it on. So now we only usually do 1,000 copies. We just did this early duo stoner metal band that we just did a reissue for. We did 2,000, but as efficient as we are now, we can take that on. But I've been 8, 10, 12 weeks out since the day we opened.
What are you finding from bands that maybe you talk to, old musician friends that you've known for a while? Are people leaning towards getting vinyl more often now than they used to?
I think so. I think the bigger plants are feeling that, the resurgence. When I first started doing this, I feel like it was definitely on the rise, but it wasn't the big phenomenon maybe it is now.
Yeah.
And I knew that even if records dropped off the face of the planet, that we could with 1 or 2 machines stay alive, just pressing, even if it was just underground records, reggae records. I knew that there would be a market regardless of what happened. And this was never like a money move, obviously. I told you the story,
Yeah.
It was just a way for me to make a job and do something good for, I played music my entire life, like try to do something good for people too.
But for the artist, when they're selling their merch, at the end, that's probably their big money maker. That's the most expensive item
Right,
that
at
they
these
sell.
shows, yeah.
See, what's the tipping point for an artist themselves to make it worth their while to get vinyl and be able to make money off of that vinyl?
It's usually like 25-30% more expensive to make a record than a CD. If you're on a major label, you see less than 1% of your record sales, and your revenue is largely in ticket sales,
Right.
And
all
other
live.
merch.
Unless they're an independent artist,
Yeah.
they're only making a portion of that. Anyways.
Right.
Is there a minimum order for a band?
I'll do 100, but it goes from like $12 a record to do 100 to like $650 to do 250 or 300. So the sweet spot's like 300.
Yeah.
We do a lot of 500s, 300s.
So $300 would be what? Like, I don't know, $8 a record or something like that? 6? No.
I was told there would be no math.
You don't do 45.
Not yet.
No one.
Yep.
No one
Well,
wants
I
those.
thought you were gonna do. I saw you were gonna do 7 and 10 inch.
Yes, that's the dream. And that press I'm making kind of like a transformer machine so we can load 7-inch molds into
And
it.
that would be just for a lesser number of songs on the album.
Yep.
Is that the only reason why you do something like that?
Yeah, and a lot of people like them still. But the 10-inch I'm more intrigued by just because it's rare.
Does it play like a 33 RPM?
It does,
That's
yeah.
what they do. They
Mhm.
don't- It's not 75 RPM.
It should be.
No,
it should be
78.
45. Yeah.
78. Sorry.
That was a 78 and the 45.
78, 45, and 33.
Yeah, I never
Yeah.
had a 78.
As a kid, I used to have a couple 78s.
Huh.
They're pretty amazing. They're like the shellac, real kind of sturdy.
They were like
old
really
records.
thick.
Yeah.
I think I had some Disney ones as a kid
Yeah.
or something.
You talked about recycling and also the virgin stuff. Does it sound different, the recycled stuff versus the virgin?
I would argue it sounds better.
Recycled.
It can.
Really?
And it's just my own theory that when you extrude the PVC the first time, I think that it does something on a molecular level that makes it more temperamental to another round of heat. And, the first time you're kind of getting all of this stuff out of it and massaging it. And the second time through, I don't know what it is, but I trust it and
So
it
these
works.
are, and just so people listening, these are all recycled records.
That we make.
Why is it half and half? Can you ever do a fully recycled album?
You can. Yep. And that color bin that I showed you is all like the random color scraps that yields a psychedelic variety.
There's a really special quality to this whole place, and it's really good to be in Burlington. And it's not just about the music, but it's about the community. It's a philosophy here, and I think the fact that the Burlington Record Plant literally is planted here in Burlington is a perfect marriage for that.
Yeah, lots of support that prove that true. You know,
Right.
from a lot of people. It's pretty incredible.
What was the most favorite album you've done here? If there is a way to even figure that out.
One of my favorites was that Campos record.
I love this.
Peace and Rhythm. They're a record label in
The one with all the
Massachusetts.
colors there,
Yep.
yeah.
I really love the stuff that label puts out. Animals as Leaders. We did a Silver Series edition, special edition. They're like one of my favorites.
That's the other beautiful thing about vinyl. You can see the artwork.
Yeah.
And you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
see it on CD. You never look at it
Right.
on the computer.
Wow.
I still, like, every day I leave and I'm like, I don't feel like I have anything figured out. The second that I think that I have a part of the process, I mean, don't get me wrong, I use a lot of scientific troubleshooting and I'm very careful with how I monitor
Sure,
things. But
sure.
as soon as I start to feel like I got it, I just go with the flow. There's machine karma. There's all, you can get real heady about it.
It's
So
like being
Yeah.
a musician. As soon as you
Yeah.
think you figure it out. I mean, I've never.
what
actually
fun would that be?
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's the beauty of music.
Yeah. We're really excited for you because you're
Thank
3
you.
years into this. But as you said, you want to keep going. It's a privilege to be sitting here and literally in the midst of this vinyl production.
My last question.
Yeah.
When are you going to start playing music again? Well, I mean, you've got the
Yeah, Blowtorch.
Blowtorch.
And there's another band my brother and I are in called Siding Spring that's like instrumental rock.
Oh,
But
cool.
I play every day. I have to do that. Like I said, like I I don't do anything else. And that's my drug. And if I don't do it, things get weird. My wife knows it. And it's
Yeah.
something that I have to do.
Yeah. I
I
hear you.
hear you.
I think it's important to recognize the importance of what you guys are doing too, and to the people that are listening to your show. It's like there's not many people that are driving over state lines to go and for whatever reason like want to talk to me, and that's a huge deal. That's a real proactive thing it's very much integrated into what we're doing here,
Really appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you. Yeah, it's important. I appreciate it, really. All right. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Find out more about Justin at burlingtonrecordplant.com. We will also have some video to share of a little tour Justin gave us of the process. We will post that at abovethebasement.com, where you can also sign up for our newsletter, listen and subscribe to our podcast, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and look at all the nice pictures we post on Instagram. We are everywhere. On behalf of Ronnie and myself, thanks for listening. Tell your friends, and remember, Boston music, like its history, is unique.